Everybody. Today we are being joined by an esteemed member of an esteemed JN alumni, Ria Janeja, BFM grad of 2015, and she's currently pursuing her MBA at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. She graduated in 2015 and worked at KPMG, after which she moved on to NIIF. We're so glad to have you here. And
Thanks for having me.
first question. Tell us a little bit about yourself. You know, the background, your background, why you came to Jai Hind, your transition from high school to Jai Hind.
Yeah. So let me start off with Jai Hind. I actually came to Jai Hind for junior college where I was a science student. And I really loved the place. I liked how it was so diverse, and because you could mingle with people across science, commerce, and arts, I felt like the cultural diversity was something that really drew me to it. Also, when I really compared it to other colleges, I felt like it gave me the opportunity not just to be academic, but also pursue things outside that were valued, which is why for me it was no question. I knew I wanted to continue in Jai Hind even for my undergraduate degree. I did make a big switch from science to commerce after the 12th grade, but it's a decision I don't regret. So yeah, I did my BFM at Jai Hind, graduated in 2015. Post that, I went the finance route like a lot of other people. I started my career as an analyst in the deal advisory practice at KPMG. And after 2.5 years there, I moved to the National Investment and Infrastructure Fund on more of an investment side role. And now I'm doing my MBA at Wharton. But outside of the academic things, I think it's important to find a hobby and stick to it. So singing is something I've been doing for the past, I would like to say 8 years. But it's something that rejuvenates me, and it's something that I really like pursuing outside of.
Could you please iterate as to what pushed you to take up the internship with KPMG during your final year, I think it was, or in between
Yeah,
your second year and final year,
my second third
and
year.
how that experience was, and then if you could like sort of segue it into your a short segue into your experience with KPMG and NIIF together.
Yeah. So I think every year that I went through my undergraduate degrees, the internships became more serious to me because I was really trying to figure out what mattered. For me, I had developed a network with KPMG while I was in Jai Hind. I think one thing I forgot to mention was that while I was at Jai Hind, I was the student ambassador for KPMG on campus. So I had already interacted with the partners, directors, and managers there. And I knew I had contributed to developing their brand on campus. So asking them for an internship and giving me an opportunity was not that hard at the time. So I would say that's how I really landed that internship with the same team that I was anyways working with offline on campus.
Yeah.
That internship experience, I mean, God, it was really long ago. I don't really remember so many specifics. But I would say like it gave me more than anything an idea of how working at like an MNC looked like. Like it's not just about the work you do, it's about the connections you build. That was the
Right.
first time I realized the importance of the network that I had built. I saw people struggling to get internships, and I think getting an internship as like an undergrad is really easy. Okay, like there are a lot of companies who are like willing to give you opportunities as long as you ask for them. So I think for me, I learned like the value of the network. I learned what being professional really meant. I think through my project, which was mainly research oriented, I also learned how to better organize my thoughts, because I feel like we're generally very all over the place. But when
Yeah.
you have a final deliverable, that's someone who's much senior, who doesn't have time to really skim through, you learn organization. I really enjoyed my internship. So I think for me, when I graduated BFM or during the placement
Yeah.
cycle, I really wanted to work in M&A. That was an
Yeah.
aspect of finance that I enjoyed. So for me, I had worked my way through narrowing that aspect of finance that I enjoyed, and I thought it was M&A. I was told that again I got based on my own personal network, and the fact that being a KPMG ambassador obviously helped, and I had already interned with them. So I worked with the deal advisory team, which covered everything from analyzing the competitive landscape to developing investment pipelines, diligences, financial valuation, and things along those lines. I really enjoyed the role for the time that I was there. During that role, I also wanted, I mean, I did feel like I was still lacking skills, which is why I continued and pursued the CFA.
Right.
And while I was at KPMG, I was able to finish all 3 levels. And I think once I finished all 3 levels, I realized how much I wanted to be on the other side of the table. I didn't want to just consult a client. I wanted to make those decisions myself and see my decisions come to light, which is when I decided that I wanted to move to a more buy-side role. And that's where NIF came in. I was fortunate that while at KPMG, I focused on the infrastructure M&A sector. So I had met a couple of people through that. And because infrastructure is a really niche sector, like for one, almost everyone knows everyone in that sector. That was like a good way for me to be introduced to like the current CEO of NIF. And I think just talking to him about what my career aspirations were and showing an interest, I was able to land that interview and then go from there to NIF, which I think is by far one of the favorite. I mean, I haven't had so many jobs, but like it has been one of like my favorite years at work. I think that place really shot up my confidence. Maybe if you asked me in 2017 when I was at KPMG, I would say no, there's no way I'm getting into Wharton. But when I was at NIF, because I suddenly had to represent the firm, I just saw myself evolving in the poise and the confidence that I exuded. And secondly, I knew that these decisions were high stakes because there was actual money involved, and there's no blaming it on anyone else because I'm not the consultant anymore, but as an investor, it's like your money on the line. And lastly, I think because of NIF being sovereign in nature, I think just the kind of people I met, it was whether it was target firms, it was other consultants, it was government bodies, it was ministry officials or members of the Department of Economic Affairs. They had so much to contribute. And I think like the best part of my role was just the people that I had the chance to actually meet and brush shoulders with.
So next, I really want to dive into your MBA experience now. So when you joined Wharton, can you tell us a little bit about the culture there, the kind of student clubs, the stuff you've been involved in, what you love about the place, and sort of a short summary of your first year?
So I think Wharton can be very overwhelming, but at the same time, it's like a great experience for you to like broaden your horizons, really meet people outside your comfort zone, and more importantly, put yourself in a zone that I can guarantee you will never be comfortable in because you will be challenged every minute of the way. I think Wharton, and for that matter, any school, is what you make of it. There are so many resources, and that includes like just academic resources, professional resources, just the people, the network, the alumni base, current students. And I think you interacting with whoever you want to actually help you chart out your career or build on your skills is the actual value of that MBA. The MBA and the value of any top school is actually in its network. The community is really, really diverse. So, I mean, I've met people from every country in South America, to people in Romania, to people in Australia, China, and like everywhere. I've been in the same room with people from all these countries, and I think it like adds perspective to how they think. Previously, I would have never thought that, oh, you know, like say people in the US actually spend a lot of time on small talk versus Indians who always want to get to the point. And those are cultural nuances that I wouldn't have picked on unless I was put in a scenario. And I think those subtle traits are like so important. It's also really fun when you think about the clubs. They're divided across professional clubs, affinity clubs, and fun clubs. So I think my favorites are obviously the fun clubs. You name anything you want, and there's a club for it. There is food club, cocktail club, there's cigar
Wow.
club, there's
What?
golf club, there's sailing club. I don't know, you literally name whatever you want, and I'm sure there's a club at Wharton that can like satisfy your hobby. And I think I've really enjoyed those aspects. I think my two standout interests are so definitely I was passionate about music. Surprisingly, of maybe the 150 plus clubs that Wharton had, it didn't have a music club.
Oh, what? Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that was something a couple of friends and I co-founded at Wharton, and I think like that's something that's really close to my heart because it's something that I was passionate about. I got to meet such amazing people and work with them to making this an official club, which again is a process, like everything is. And I think it's a way that we'll be able to leave our legacy at Wharton, which is really exciting. I think my second favorite music club, I think my second favorite club has been so the food club has like turned me into like an amateur master chef in 1 year.
Oh, wow.
I have learned cuisines across like the globe. I've hosted multiple chef sessions, like student chef sessions. And it's been amazing just like going to people's houses and seeing them host such elaborate lunches or dinners. And it's really fun. So these are also small group events. So like Wharton is like 825 people, which is really hard to like maneuver and find your niche. But I think like these dinners, which are limited to like 6 or 7 people, are an amazing way to meet people, sample different cuisines, learn. And I think I've made some really good friends through the food club.
Okay, so I'd be lying if I say I wasn't a little jealous right now, but also very, very motivated to go to a place like Wharton. Um, I want you to talk. I think I skipped a question. I would like to come back to it, which is your application experience. I want to talk about, your anxieties and your fears when you were navigating the application process, what writing the essay was like, and how was the interview process, and how should one prepare for that from a personal standpoint, not from just as, for it as an event, but like as a person. How does one prepare for that experience?
Okay, so I think the first thing is that you need some time. Okay, people come into these applications thinking, yeah, the application opens on 1st July, I'm going to open the website on 1st and start writing my essay. I don't think that's like the best path. Again, like people have different experiences, but just speaking about how I did it, I actually spent a good 6 months researching schools, researching what is needed to be like a successful MBA applicant, and speaking to people. Like every cousin I had who had studied in the US, I spoke to all of them, asked them to connect. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is that the application process is long drawn out, but you'll start appreciating the value once you actually start self introspecting. So at this point, I don't think you, or like when I was in your shoes, would know what you wanted out of the MBA. But I think like the two questions that you need to answer is like, why an MBA and why now? And secondly, where do you want to be after this MBA? Like, let me tell you, like, just candidly, whatever you write in your essays might not be your actual career plan. Okay. I maybe know like 50% of people who like say, I want to be an investment banker after B school and actually are investment bankers. But the whole idea is to get you to think. So it was really interesting for me to see like where my skills fit with or without the MBA, and how the MBA was like that piece of the puzzle that pushed me to like the 2 years after the MBA. So I would say like the little advice that I can give is that start a little early, but start on your own. Don't get dragged into that herd mentality of whatever people are doing. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Like, yes, you have to have dream schools, but make sure you have like tiers of schools that you apply to. So they're like your dream schools, your reach schools, and then your safe schools. You need to like make sure you kind of put your applications across these three buckets, because while an MBA application is a lot about your skill, there is also a luck component that not you, not me can really control.
Right.
So it's important to like diversify your just your reach of these schools. The second thing is that in the end, listen to yourself. Like there could be like, I don't know, counselors, friends, teachers, whoever they are, who have like a lot of advice to give you. And I mean, I think the first time I asked like 3 of my friends to review my essays, I got back 3 different perspectives, and I was just like, who should I trust? Like I really like this friend of mine, I think he's really successful, but I don't necessarily agree with how he thinks my essay should be. So I think like you need to have that one person you trust, and this could be anyone really. But then work with that person to make sure you present like your best foot forward. And I think the last thing is like a little easier to say in hindsight, but believe a little bit more in yourself, because then that comes out in your application that you believe in your skills.
Right.
And I think once you are okay with your application, the interview process is like, so making it from the application to the interview process is like a huge achievement. I think you've already like covered a lot of bases to like reach the interview process. And I think the interview process is again different for like all schools. I think they all follow different formats. For example, Wharton had a group discussion and an interview, whereas none of the other schools I did really had any group discussion. I think every school works differently. Some conduct alumni interviews and some do like admission committee member interviews. Some are 30 minutes, some are 1 hour. Some even have like cases. So it's very dependent on the school that you apply to. But I think a lot of people ask me like how the interview process is, but I think like you can prep for the interview like within the 2 week time period that you get from when you get the interview call to the actual interview. But I don't think that's something any of you should be concerned about right now, because that's a hurdle you can cross when it comes. Right. I think the bigger hurdle is like really differentiating yourself in that applicant pool. Like 8,000 people apply, but like only 800 are going to get in. So why do you stand out amongst those 8,500 word essays? Like you need to like make sure that you spend more time on that, because that's a much more difficult hurdle to cross.
Right. So what do you believe was your selling point to the admissions officer?
I wish like I could have asked the admissions office this question. I don't personally know the answer to that, but I think for me, if I were to look at my profile, the 2 things were, maybe 3 things were showing career progression, doing a role that was impactful, and being multifaceted. So the first 2, I think, go hand in hand. I had like career growth. It was not maybe a promotion, but it was like through my career, I had advanced from being a consultant to being on the buy side, which is like career growth. The second thing was making an impact. So I think a lot of the impact that I made, it didn't matter if I wasn't like obviously a partner to crack a multi-million-dollar deal, but at my level, I was making an impact in my own way, whether it was organizing knowledge databases for any organization that I worked with, whether it was like just creating social inclusion within the community that I was in. Those were initiatives that I took on my own. And I think another one that stood out is just like doing something outside your role. I worked with NIF. I still managed their social media and LinkedIn page for them for like a year that I was there. It was not part of my job description. It's just something I knew I liked doing and I could do. And I thought it was a way for me to contribute and make an impact. So I think those 2 things like really stand out. Everyone who applies is great and has worked at like a top investment bank or like a top consultancy firm or a top marketing firm. So there's not much that you and I would have different. But like if I made an impact and I showed growth, those are 2 things that stand out. And I think the last thing is like you need to be interesting and fun. Like you need to stand out. So for me, I think like for me was definitely singing, and for me was not like singing was just a random hobby I picked out, but singing had like a backstory and it mattered to me and it helped me navigate challenges in life and it gave me confidence in a way that other things wouldn't. So I think like for me, I think those 3 factors probably stood out. And after coming to B school, I realized that people are so multifaceted, and I think what makes them interesting is what really catches the eye of the admissions committee. um, so I think like that's something that comes to my mind if I were to think what they
Hmm.
like.
Okay, so I want to now dive into the last half that's talking about your work experience after joining Wharton. You know, where I know you are interning with IFC, and you've done a couple of consulting roles before. Could you dive into that and tell us what you've been up to?
Definitely been rather uncertain and unprecedented for all of us. Ideally, I was supposed to be working in SF as a consultant this summer, but due to geographic constraints and working cross borders, like my plans had to change. So I think then I worked towards getting like an internship with the IFC, with the DC team. So I'm working with the infrastructure and natural resources team in DC. Um, I think it's a really interesting role, and I think just because of the world that we are in right now, like the role of IFC has become so indispensable in just financing emerging economies to like really come out of this crisis.
Okay.
And while I can't personally reveal the exact details of my work, like I just think the work that I'm doing currently is like very relevant to how COVID is shaping investment
Wow.
decisions. And it's also very different for me because I'm working in I mean, part of my work is in the mining sector, not a place I've ever worked in before. So I think like for me, coming out of this, learning about a completely new sector is going to be really interesting. And I think secondly, I really love the people I'm working with. They're very supportive, they are very patient with all the questions that I have, which might seem very, very amateur to them, which are just basic questions about the industry, but they still spend the time to like get me involved and up to date. So overall, a really enjoyable experience so far. And just over the summer, I mean, even while my last quarter at Wharton was going on, I and before starting this internship in June, I did two remote consulting projects. So we have something called the Wharton Global Impact Initiative, which basically pairs students with like impact organizations or social enterprises around the world. And two that really stood out to me were I worked with Sanergy, which is an urban sanitation NGO based in Nairobi.
Okay.
So Sanergy, an urban sanitation, and we worked with them to kind of develop like a product service model and help them just revamp their entire cost model. So that was something that was really interesting, and I was able to do it remotely. So I was really grateful for that. Secondly, I was able to work in a consulting role, which was also like a new experience to me. Like it wasn't like a finance role that I was always comfortable with. It was kind of new. And lastly, I think it gave you a lot of freedom to like do what you want, because I mean, a lot of time these NGOs do really great work, but they don't have that kind of business knowledge that you
Right.
and I would probably have after being at school. So just maneuvering and creating a strategic roadmap for them from scratch is like really interesting. And right before I started with IFC, I also worked for like about 3 weeks with another social enterprise in Mongolia
Oh,
called
wow.
GareHub. So I actually loved working with the GareHub team. They're all extremely great people. Weirdly, like all of them have like studied at like top Ivy institutions in the US and gone back to their home country, Mongolia, to like really help develop that the rural districts in Mongolia. So I'm working with them to help develop a strategic roadmap and their longer term aspiration over the next 3 to 5 years. So it's been really interesting work, and at the same time, like it's work that makes an impact. Um, you're able to do something for an organization that goes much beyond just profit motives, and it's also a great learning experience. So I think I have used every minute of the summer that I could possibly have doing something interesting. Because, like I said, business school is you taking advantage of all the opportunities that you
Right.
have. it would be silly not to like make use of all the opportunities. So it doesn't always have to be professional. I mean, you could be doing something fun. You could be sailing, I don't know, in Spain if you want, but it's like, it's all what you make of it.
Wow, that's amazing to hear. Another question I had about these very small stints you just mentioned. Did you travel to Nigeria and Mongolia? I mean, Nairobi and Mongolia?
So in an ideal situation, if it wasn't virtual, yes, I would be on site for like a week or 10 days doing that project, and also obviously doing groundwork before leaving for the site and completing the project later. But because of the pandemic, it's all virtual. But in an ideal
Right.
scenario, yeah, I would be on ground in Mongolia and Nairobi.
How has working from home been for you? You know, I mean, you're working with a team in DC, you said, so you're working in a different time zone, first of all, and you're currently at your home in Mumbai. So how's that worked out
Yeah.
for you? Just a little question I had.
So I think I got a little accustomed to working across time zones when I was doing classes virtually in the last quarter. Like I think my whole living schedule changed a bit. So I got a little used to it. But that being said, I think it kind of depends obviously on the work that you're doing and how much of it requires you to have continuous face-to-face interaction. So I think like with the IFC, a lot of my role is also kind of autonomous in a way. So I don't need continuous interactions. But I think at a reasonable time, to the extent I can, like I work. But I would say working from home is not as nice as it seems from the outside. Like it is a lot harder than what I would just imagine myself. When I say work from home, like I was used to the one day of work from home, maybe when I was at KPMG, which seemed really great. But when you're doing this every day, it's like a whole different ball game. So I think like a couple of things are that you have to make sure you're not getting distracted by the number of things that exist at home. There's that urge to maybe like watch TV, there's that urge to maybe take a nap, there's that urge to do a lot of things that you wouldn't actually do at
Right,
work.
totally.
um, so yeah, you know, balancing what the house has to offer versus like you working. The second thing is that a lot of the aspects of work is actually also speaking to people. At least when you're interning, you want to build those connections, you want to understand how the industry works, and you just want to know what people have worked in and how their career progression has been. So it is a lot harder to actually connect with people, because say if I was at work, someone would be like, oh Ria, welcome to the team, let's grab lunch, and I would have someone to have lunch with every
Right.
day and speak to them even if it was half an hour. Well, which becomes a lot harder here. So I think it's all about the effort that you put in. So like the kind of work I'm doing, I've used it as an opportunity to connect with people who work in this sector and maybe like to speak to them for 20 minutes while I'm getting their insights on their life. They're also helping me with my work in some way.
Wow.
And I think the last thing is that you need to maintain a schedule. I think the first week I found myself working like 8 hours was not a thing. Like I was just working the whole day because I mean, what else do I do? But I think you need to take those breaks. Like you need to know that if ideally if I was in office, like I don't know, depending on what kind of office, 6 p.m., 8 p.m., 10 p.m. But once I shut my laptop and I go home, like I'm home. But
Right.
here, because there's no, I'm not telling
Boundary.
myself, yeah, I have to drive home. So you need to like make sure you're also doing and giving yourself some time, else you could get like exhausted. But just like three things I have, like I don't know, this could feed into your next question. But like maneuvering this whole situation like has maybe taught me three things. The first thing is you need to be flexible. My plan A didn't work out, but I was like, I made sure I had a plan B and I made sure that that worked out. The second thing is like being really proactive. You can't just like sit on your sit on your bed and be like, oh, nothing's working out, I'm just going to give up. Like there are opportunities. It's just for you to go out there and be proactive and maintain those relationships with the people you've spoken to. And lastly, I think it's like you need to be flexible. So that kind of plays into your mindset. like be flexible, have a growth mindset, be willing to learn something new. It might not be what you'll do maybe after B
Sure.
school or like 2 years down the line, but every job I think has something to teach you. So be flexible to that. You might not get your ideal role right now because the world is just not in your favor, but it's fine. Like there are a lot of things that you could do and you could learn. And I think as students or as young professionals, like I think learning is like the biggest thing you could take away from any experience.